Hello and welcome. It's episode 92 of On the Time Lash. You're listening to us, or increasingly now you can watch us over on our YouTube channel, however you're with us. Thank you. My name is Ben. Hello. And with me, well, if you're on YouTube, look at him. God, if he didn't, he looked good in the last couple of recordings that we did. And now, well, he's had a bit of a makeover, mate.
I just, I got somebody else that in my household, I should add, obviously, in case the government are watching. Just to fucking take it all off. Because I don't know when I'll be able to walk into a barbershop again. So I just thought I'd, do a bit of a reset, do a bit of a, Ninth Doctor, or that's maybe even a bit shorter than that.
Well, what it shows off is that it pays to regulate your whiskey intake. I listen to the audio. Okay. So obviously you edit the audio, I edit the footage here. So sometimes we don't know which bit we've each kept in and which we've gotten rid of. And of course, at the start of the podcast, last episode, you had that whole bit where you're talking about regulating whiskey, and there was other stuff about Richie wanting to do less farting in his life.
I thought because we talked about later in the episode, I think at that point we'd already talked about it, but I'd sort of stuck it at the front of the show just as a gag. But I thought because obviously the point that the idea of the mummy is it's the horror of kind of creeping death.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be quite funny to open an episode about two mummy stories with three men talking about aging and regulating their alcohol intake and calorie intake, and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. So I thought,
there's nothing wrong with you, mate. You look good. So obviously it was about losing weight, and you look great. You look nice, and another, as well as showing yourself off, we were trying to work out how we could show off the T-shirt.
But yeah, it's a Clayton Hickman original, of course.
Can't tell what it is on audio. If you're joining us visually, obviously you saw it's Devil's End BBC 3 End transmission from.
I don't think you can even get these ones anymore, because I think you got like a little chap on the door from the BBC lawyers. So
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I managed to buy it in the small period in which it was available. So limited edition.
Wow. Okay, so looking even more like $1 million there, Mark.
Indeed.
Wow, this kind of sounds about homoerotic. That's basically just opened the episode.
Or as Pete Lambert pointed out on the last episode, it's like, this is getting a bit homoerotic. Seriously, lads, no, it's not.
No, I guess it would have to be reciprocal to be homoerotic. And as it is, I'm sitting here with exactly zero compliments from you coming my way.
Listen, You are looking very well as well. Your beard is resplendent.
I was actually looking
Your
at
hair is lovely and kind of, pulled back. It's very good.
So I'm trying to do a bit of a fade going on down there, and maybe it's just a bit patchy. It looks a bit more like I've just slapped a bunch of mud on my face and I was only half done wiping it off by the time we started. I was going to say broadcasting. This is not what that says. So am I? I haven't, as the last couple as well. I'm also on the losing poundage express. That's no official term for anything. So I'm just going to go into straight just now what I'm going to be drinking as we watch Flatline and as we watch the Celestial Toymaker. It is I'm doing another gin and tonic evening. In keeping, I shook up the bottle of tonic, so it's flat for us dealing with Flatline. And you could also say as well that it falls a bit flat, the Celestial Toymaker. So, that's how I'm getting in on this.
Well, I've actually got myself a sort of nice bottle of single malt this afternoon because it was on offer in Morrison's. But, I'm just still on the whiskey. As I try to get my belly to flatten, as I get my silhouette to represent more of a flat line.
Okay, nice. What's also funny about this, and because I'm recording this my side, is that when you did that kind of like smug, I've just done a pun.
I've done a joke. Yeah.
You momentarily froze, so the smug look hung around for longer than I think anyone was comfortable with. But we'll keep it in. This is the bonus content people are tuning in for. Again, this is not what this is. But yes, we are dealing with Flatline in our new Who watch through. That's where we are. And we paired it. This was again your pick, Mark. So go run us through again the thinking behind it.
Yeah, so firstly, I'm very sorry. Secondly, chose the Celestial Toymaker because, you know, it's about two kind of interdimensional, slightly strange villains. And also the Doctor is absent, quite obviously absent in one, the Celestial Toymaker, but sort of cleverly not as absent as perhaps the actor was in Flatline. And so the companion has to kind of do most of the doctoring, I guess we'll say. So that's Clara in Flatline. I was going to say Stephen and Dodo in the Celestial Toymaker, but Stephen.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, poor Dodo. She gets a rough time of it, doesn't she?
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll come to that. We've got, you know, we'll get to that second half.
Yeah. Well, should we just
I don't know. Should we? Yeah. Let's just start. Let's get on with it.
Okay, stats. So, Flatline was written by Jamie Matheson. He was for a fortnight in October of 2014. Jamie Matheson was the king of Doctor Who. He wrote this. He obviously wrote Mummy on the Orient Express, and it was directed by Douglas McKinnon, who, again, I think we've spoken considerably on him in past episodes.
Yeah,
he's a real directorial talent for Doctor Who. I really like his episodes. It was broadcast on Saturday, the 18th of October, 2014, at 8:25 p.m. And it was watched on the night by 4.6 million, and consolidated that went up to 6.71 million viewers. And it had, I included it for the first time in our last episode. And so I'm going to do it again here. The AI of Flatline was 85, which is on a par with what Mummy on the Orient Express was, which was, up until that point, it had the best AI of the series. So with it, a vein of gold in
a flat line, you could say, because it's maintained its position for 2 weeks in a row.
And it's another good one. It's another classic.
Oh God, yeah.
It balances out the shitey Celestial Toymaker by having a wonderful new.
Yeah, maybe we should do that more often, because I think we've done a couple recently where it's like both. I mean, you actually came up with a good idea with Nightmare and Silver, where we're like, should we just choose something that we like to go with it?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we should try and do that as much as possible.
Yeah, I think we need to reward ourselves every now and again.
Yes.
We'll deal with this at the end of the episode. We've been scratching our head as to what to pair in the Forest of the Night with.
Yeah.
And we'll talk that out. But some of the suggestions have been good. Some of the suggestions have been tenuous. We could just go for fuck it. We're always talking about wanting to do the Romans. What's the connection? The connection is shut up. That's what the connection is. But yes, anyway, okay. So they are the stats. That's the chat. Now, and
wow,
we've spruced up the format yet again. It's time for
Degsy's Where Did It Come game.
Now, so obviously last week there was a slightly controversial edition of Degsy's, of the first in a new run of Degsy's Where Did It Come game.
It wasn't controversial. I just feel like I was joshing you and you didn't take it as well as I meant it to be.
Well, because I listened back on the edit and I was like, I mean, surely I would have been a bit more hesitant. I would have been a bit more surprised when I read out the result. No, it totally sounded like I just read the message in advance. So anyway, so obviously there was a fabulous star prize on offer.
But we don't know what it is.
But we don't know what it is. It's a mystery prize. And basically Ben and I will compete until I think last Christmas, I think is going to be the last one.
Yeah.
If J.R. Southall's listening, I've not forgotten, and we'll probably stick it at the end of the last Christmas episode. But that's all I'm going to say for now. But Derek's been in touch, the result of last week's Deggs' Word at the Come game has been referred to an independent adjudicator, well, to the judge,
Yeah.
and the judge's decision is final. So here is that judge. Okay, here's the deal. Before this recording, if we take the scores from the whole series so far, so that's the whole of Series 8, the score was 4-2 to Ben. 5 points for a direct hit is too much. So you, Mark, get 3 points if you get it bang on. That means going into tonight's game, the score is Mark 5, Ben 4. Okay? So now, basically, it's going to be 1 point if we get it near enough.
Yeah. Okay.
And 3 points if we get it bang on. And what I've also done to avoid any difficulty is I got my long-suffering partner to read Derek's text message that he sent me an hour ago and write it on a bit of paper and put it in this sealed envelope, which I will open in a minute.
Oh my God! I mean,
she's addressed it lovingly. Just there.
I mean, I meant it as like a joke last episode, and you've now gone to a whole Carabrax-Saucian level of security that makes me feel like I am a moaning piece of shit when I just met
it's good. It adds the drama, It adds to the drama. So, Ben Birth.
Okay.
Flatline. Where do you think it comes?
Flatline.
289 in the Doctor Who Dynamic Rankings poll.
Okay. To be honest, if anything, I enjoyed it more than Mummy on the Orient Express. So for me, it should be pretty high up there. I'm going to say 90.
90?
Yeah, number 90.
What? But so you don't think it's higher than Mummy on the Orient Express?
Oh, wait, why? What was Mummy on the Orient Express?
Because that was 32.
Oh, shit, my pants. Okay.
See, I'm helping. I'm not a cheat.
So tell you what, I think. So I enjoyed Flatline more than Mummy, but I feel like Mummy's got that kind of. It might have that kind of production level edge. So I think Flatline is 45. I'm going to say 45.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because with Doctor Who polls, you always kind of wonder who's voting. And I always feel like sort of new series stuff can sometimes maybe fall out of the sort of top spots.
Yeah, I feel like stuff's got to age first.
Yeah, but this is fucking good. And I would agree, I probably enjoyed it more than Mummy, which is not to slight Mummy at all. I think it's a classic. But this kind of does something a bit different, whereas Mummy is quite traditional Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But then does that mean it's going to be higher or lower? I think you're probably right, but I think I'm going to go a bit higher. I think it's still going to be in the top 40. I'm going to go 37.
Okay. All right.
Going to open the envelope.
Oh, you can hear the rustling.
So Derek says, all right, lads, in the dynamic ranking poll, Flatline comes in at a round number 50. 50. So Ben's closest.
I'm the closest.
With a score of 7.6 between the name of the Doctor at 49. Really? That high for the name of the Doctor? Nice. That's good. That, fucking gracious in victory, isn't he? Listeners and viewers. Well, listeners can't see what he did there.
This is where it all collapsed. Before we hit 100 episodes, the partnership breaks up.
No, I think we should stick to finish the Capaldia and then we'll go our separate ways.
Okay.
Getting more and more infuriated with each other as the episodes go on. So yeah, between the name of the Doctor at 49 and Earthshock at 51.
Okay.
So there we go.
Strange
that's interesting,
company.
actually. Yeah, I can't. Name of the Doctor is quite high.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's.
Did they not hear our podcast on the subject?
So it's 5-5. Ooh, all to play for.
It's all to play. I've just got an image now of Derek sitting in his flat in Aberdeen, dressed as a mandarin, sitting on his couch, watching us on a little screen.
Well, the funny thing about Flatline I noticed was that it's basically just the Doctor and Missy just watching Doctor Who.
Yeah, she's weirdly got an iPad, which
with an incredible zoom on.
It has the same frame and the same shot as the shot that we've just seen of Clara.
Yeah.
So it's like 60s TV when they're like you're on the Starship Enterprise, or where it's perfectly presented and cut up like Trial of a Time Lord. It's perfectly, for some reason she's got something that perfectly creates a narrative, cuts out all the extraneous stuff.
It's Gallifreyan technology. The Matrix just has like just an inbuilt editor.
Yeah, it's a great storyteller.
Yeah,
Matrix is a great storyteller.
Right, so I have no idea what's happening here, so I'm going to quickly.
So yes, this is listener correspondence.
Listener correspondence. So first of all, this should bring everybody up. Yeah, great. So JR Southall says, my only issue with Flatline was the way it draws a very black and white picture of the foreman of the probation gang, which felt like it was making some bizarre political point that surely wasn't there to be made. And the weird Deus Ex Machina ending too. The Doctor just shows up and the day seems to be saved because he's there, rather than because of anything anybody's actually done. It's very strange. Meanwhile, the episode itself is filled with brilliant moments, many of the directorial touches, some spooky and some comic. It's mostly a riot. We have Jeff Waddle. Flatline was one of the highlights of the season for me because it did something different. Beings from another dimension, that's completely unique and bizarre. Well acted. Could have done without the probation gang though, but that's about its only fault. 9 out of 10. There we go. And Paul McAvoy says, Flatline's core Doctor Who has got a great concept, an interesting setting, and a terrifyingly mysterious villain. This and Mummy are what the entire season should have been filled with. They completely live up to the promise of season 8, in which little else from it does. The special effects are great, right down to the tiny TARDIS, but the editing, well, Peter Capaldi's hair magically changing in length when he's in the TARDIS sticks out like a sore thumb. It's the dimensions. It's messing with his hair. It's messing with his hair. It's fine. It's all fine. Over on Twitter, funnily enough, Flatline's got quite a bit of correspondence. Celestial Toymaker, not so much. Rassilon's Trousers. Flatline's the highlight of season 8. Proof that the show can still be original 51 years in. Full of clever, slightly mad ideas that could easily fall flat, but instead are brilliantly realised. The best being that it gives you a Doctor-like episode without you really noticing. Awesome. And finally, if I can find it, because I've got a lot of stuff that we'll get to later on. So there's not a huge amount of listener correspondence, but we've got a lot for the end, which is a new spin on the format of the show.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean the end?
Oh, for when we're kind of talking about what episodes we're going to pair with.
Sure.
We'll pick some of that stuff out. So Dylan Reese, Flatline's a glorious episode. Fresh, exciting, funny, and a hell of a monster design. It's a crime that Jamie Matheson isn't writing for the show now. It is. Lock him up. Get that chimney. Lock him up. Throw away the key. It also feels that PCAP has dialed it down and is slowly becoming the Doctor we will grow to love. Yeah, he's definitely arrived by this point.
Yes. Yeah.
And it is interesting that a writer new to the series at this point, certainly in terms of writing, obviously not necessarily in terms of sort of knowledge and fandom, kind of resets the series and gives us the Doctor rather than Malcolm Tucker.
Yeah.
So that's nice. And I think this is, because I love, we're skipping way ahead, but I love that speech when he comes out of the time. It's just everything the Doctor has been in the modern series, which is slightly hesitant, but then also apologetic, but he's kind of given them a chance and he's got to do what he's got to do. And he just plays that. He plays a fucking blinder.
Yeah.
So that I get JR's criticism that it's kind of just like, yeah, but what did he actually do? Really? Like, what? But fuck it. It's great. It sounds great. It looks great. It's acted brilliantly. Don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I did feel that. I did feel there was a little niggle, which is when he puts himself front and center, leaping out the TARDIS, no acknowledgement of Clara, of Rigsy, of what they did.
Yeah.
It's.
But then that does come later. To be fair,
It does, and it's interesting that it is couched in it being a failure, it being a bad thing rather than a good thing. And I guess one of the interesting things that I thought about is that how, we obviously have the Master as a woman, as the baddie that's going to come up in this series, and you do kind of wonder with the Doctor and all his other childhood friends that turn out to be bad uns.
Yeah.
Do each of them have a moment like that where they are thrilled with the adventure more than they are with the moral quandary and consequences and the soul searching that goes with it? The Doctor's retained that, whereas it looks like Clara just, people died, but oh my God, that was a laugh. And that's how, because, like at the end of this episode, that's what you have. You have then cutting from her to the face of the Master.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's something interesting. So I think I'm picking up a lot more about this thing of, because I think when I first saw it, I did take from it going, well, I don't know what the problem is with her becoming more like the Doctor, and what I think I'm getting now is that, well, that being like the Doctor, there's no problem, but it's being like other Time Lords who haven't made an oath to manage that ability and that power. And that's sometimes where that can lead to. So I thought, I like that. I certainly thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting rewatching this now, knowing where Clara's heading as well. And actually, it really hit me. Actually, it's kind of brilliant that they bring Rigsy back for her death, in the next series, because it does kind of form this rather nice sort of circle. She was the Doctor once, and she managed it, and so she can do it again, no problem. What could possibly go wrong? So that's quite interesting.
Because he's essentially her companion.
Yes.
So in like in bringing him back, because like why would she place her life in danger for somebody? Well, she would do it in the way that the Doctor would do it for one of his companions. She's just, so it seems like an obvious. Now it seems like an obvious thing. That's why he comes back. But yeah, it's a difficult one to talk about because it's just superlatives. I really, if anything, I've got like a list of that's kind of funny things rather than, complaints.
Yeah, sure.
I was thinking about it today. It's weird. We have another instance of it being, we've got another instance of it being set in the real world, but it still has that weird feel that you said as a kind of hallmark of the real world in Moffat. It was very soap, it was very safe with Russell T Davies. But when you're back, like the strangest place I think we've ever been in Doctor Who is that weird 1970s house with a swinging ball chair. It just seems so weird. And,
it is. Yeah, it's definitely odd. But then I think there's some really brilliant production design choices in this.
Yeah.
Because because I guess it kind of comes from, right, okay, so in the script, it's got basically a human nervous system.
Yeah.
Is a mural on the wall in this flat. So what kind of flat does that look like where that's not immediately obvious?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then you go, well, it'll probably be quite a kitschy sort of throwback 70s house, so that you don't immediately notice it when you barrel into the room and see that the police officer's disappeared. There's just loads of really, really great touches in this. Like, I think it's one of those great examples of when just every single level of Doctor Who production is just working in tandem and bringing you just let's say it, a classic.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd have that wallpaper. That wallpaper looks great. I'd have the human nervous system wallpaper, the nervous system of a policeman wallpaper. You know, I mean, if you're gonna market it, then this is the couple of months to start marketing that kind of stuff. And it's weird as we
I'm
record
glad I
this.
finished my whiskey before you said that, because I would have fucking spat.
And it's weird because as we record this, so obviously this is set in Bristol. Bristol's having a moment because today, as we record, this is the day that a bunch of Bristolians ripped down that statue in the centre of town of a slave trader and then lobbed them into the Bristol docks.
And more power to them, really. It seems quite strange to be sitting here recording the Doctor Who podcast whilst, you know, there is massive upheaval.
Is it funny? I don't know. The guy who dies in the
the really tragic alcoholic, just flatly.
Yeah, the guy on the phone, and you think, he's maybe just a bit kind of, you know, like he's got some mental stuff going on, and then you have a look around his flat when they're investigating, and fuck me, that is a lot of bevy that he's got on the table. And then, like, I think you walk past a bookcase and there's more bottles on top of that as well.
Yeah, and there's like a cup, there's like a pot noodle kind of, or whatever it is, cup on the.
Yeah.
He's not looking after himself, shall we say?
Yeah, he's not. Anyway, it was a laugh, and that was tragic. Anyway, so Flatline.
And he just gets. I mean, that's a great. I think that's one of my favorite openings to a Doctor Who story. Is this scared guy on the phone? You're not entirely sure what he's afraid of.
Yeah.
And then something attacks him, and then you've got that amazing sort of stretched, screaming face on the wall, and then boom into the titles. I love modern Doctor Who when it's not just this pre-title sequence, where it's not just the pre-title sequences. The TARDIS lands and some people point guns at them and like, "Oh, what have we got ourselves into this week?" It's literally building that world that you're about to get thrown into with the Doctor and his companion. Yeah,
it's interesting what you said about Kill the Moon. How you have this really dark philosophical discussion within a story, but it's placed in such like a bizarre moon's on egg kind of, like the tone of it seems off. The tone of this is perfect.
Yeah,
it feels like, okay, so we're starting. It's adorable. It's a shrunken TARDIS. Oh, there's TARDIS chaos happening, and then it gets incrementally and earned. It gets darker and more dangerous. And you feel at every point like this is a smooth transition from tone to tone. You know, like you go from just running in an underpass to then suddenly, wow, the basic grasp of language that the boneless have, they are able to taunt with. All they have, or the communication they do, is that it's basically two sets of numbers. And that has been converted into a really chilling taunt about intent. And then when finally you see them realized, I know there was kind of like jokes about them looking like they just come out an AHA video, the boneless, but they look like, it looks like unlike anything you've seen in Doctor Who before.
Yeah, because Jamie Matheson kind of properly I think turned up Stephen Moffat's office with like concept drawings that he'd done himself.
Yeah,
of the boneless. I think you can see them online. Because I think they're just that little bit more horrific, but what we get is really memorable and quite just that kind of that idea of the uncanny. You know, it's like it's kind of a human form. It's a recognizable human form, but just the edges are all off and nothing's kind of moving like you would expect it to. Like we were kind of talking about with the mummies last week.
Yeah, well, actually, sorry, since you just reminded me, again, completely forgot to change my background. Here you are. It's a picture.
Oh, God.
Oh, I'm getting zapped off the boneless. Oh, no.
And you have been turned into two dimensions as well, because watching this on a screen.
It's quite a nice image, actually. There you go. I'll tell you one thing I completely forgot about. I did remember. I remember walking through a park after this had gone out, and when people like Doctor Who fans get that kind of, oh, I saw some kids running about pretending to be Daleks, and like you go, it's wholesome, it's touched it. It's not like when we were part of the Edinburgh Doctor Who group, and it was like a secret cult in the basement of a pub on a Monday. It's now everywhere, and it feels great. I remember walking through a park in Edinburgh, and a kid running about pretending he was the Doctor, his mum asking him, playing along, what are you running from? And what presumably he meant was, I'm running away from the boneless.
Oh, wow, right.
I remember him saying, I'm running away from the boners. He'd obviously, two different things had gotten into his little head, and he said one in the wrong place, and it made my day. I mean, I didn't make my day to think of a little boy running away from boners. Forget that's going on the edit pile. But I just remember him saying,
well, we were all thinking it. I mean,
but yeah, it just I remember that. It was fun.
That's great. Because I think this was the point, wasn't it, where we've talked about in the past couple of episodes about sort of it going out at a kind of later time, and there was a concern that kids weren't necessarily going to be getting into it.
Yeah.
Certainly not new viewers. Like you would maybe have kids that had watched some Matt Smith, and they were maybe too young to stay up past 9 o'clock or whatever. So, their parents would watch it on iPlayer on a Sunday morning or something like that. Or they just wouldn't bother, and that it would kind of lose that. So that is quite heartening to hear, because I remember like at the time just going, nah, it's bollocks, and the idea that Peter Capaldi was too old to sort of like resonate with kids. And you look at any footage of Peter Capaldi visiting hospitals or like showing up at the Doctor Who experience, and like that's categorically bollocks.
Yeah. But then it always has been bollocks, because like how does John Pertwee in his upper crust dress working for the army, how does that resonate with children? So like
exactly,
it's all a lot of nonsense, it's but yeah, there's loads of wee elements to this that I really like chatting about, but it's all under the umbrella. It's really great, and I really like.
And that's fine. I mean, I feel like if this podcast has done anything over the past 91 and a third episodes, it's a kind of what Adam Buxton would call a ramble chat. We kind of we kind of know the sort of vague touchstones that we want to get to.
Yeah.
But we'll just have a little free-form conversation about the Doctor Who episodes.
Yeah.
And the various things that episode brings up.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, is this the best, or are these, because Mummy on the Orient Express, are these the best Doctor companion light production versions of episodes? Because obviously Capaldi's trapped in the TARDIS for this.
Yeah.
But then Clara was trapped in that mummy storage room, the luggage
car, I guess.
Yeah. Doing the kind of just taking care of what is essentially the sitting down emotional stuff in Mummy. So presumably she did that, put in a couple of days on Mummy, and then took the bulk of this, and then vice versa with Peter Capaldi.
Yeah.
And as much as I do like the attitude that the Davies years took, which is have an episode about the Doctor, build the mythology by having a whole episode of other people talking about it. I think, obviously because this is a reduced run as well now by this point, I think it's just better having creative ways of keeping them apart.
Yeah.
Having them both heavily featured.
Definitely. I mean, I think Midnight and Turn Left kind of proved that anyway, didn't they, really, in the end of Series 4. But I think it's interesting what you say about the Russell T, the first two, Love and Monsters and Blink being about the Doctor, but kind of told through other people. So is this, in a way, really. It's Clara. Obviously, she's had that beach conversation with the Doctor in the previous episode, where he's kind of outlined that kind of driving force and that like morality behind this new 12th Doctor, which is, you've just got to make the best of a selection of bad choices. And this time she gets to kind of put that into practice and kind of see what that's like. And in that process, kind of teach the Doctor a little bit about both himself and also his influence on Clara.
Mhm.
I think it's a absolute, for somebody who, you know, is like I say, a new writer to this series. I think he fucking nails those characters and their relationships and gives us some really interesting new takes on it. Like I love the bit where she gets the probation gang into like I guess the kind of train yard.
Yeah, the railway sidings, I think. Yeah.
And she's like, you know, right, okay, well, I'll just need to lie to them, because if you lie to people, they'll be more compliant or whatever it is. And the Doctor's like, well, yeah, you know. And what is it he says? Yeah, people who think they're doomed tend to, and she just goes, dawdle. I love people who are doomed tend to dawdle. That's a
Yeah.
fucking great line.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And he's kind of shocked by her coldness, I guess, or like her directness. But obviously she's kind of just reflecting him back on himself.
Yeah, I mean, she's telling the truth, but I think he's taken aback at how clinically she's describing it. And since that also comes off the back of him finding out he was being lied to about Danny and how, if at all, he was all right in her being on the TARDIS, I think he's like, oh, okay, there's something. It's not. This isn't fun anymore. This feels like feels like something's happening here, and I'm doing. It's bad what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you get that. I mean, you do get the fullest extent of that, which is, you know, like she feels like she's got to blackmail the Doctor into helping her at the start of Dark Water. You know, obviously more on that later on. But,
yeah, that's true.
But there's definitely something powerful, which is he having to say, "Why do you think I wouldn't help you?" Essentially, or do you think I?
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great scene, and I think that's one that we'll talk about in depth in 2 weeks' time. Bloody hell!
Sure is 2 weeks' time.
Oh, there is a bit here towards the end, which is Christopher Fairbanks represents the Conservative government's coronavirus policy, which is if there's a forest fire, you save the great trees. You don't deal with the brushwood. But that's the only kind of vague critical analysis that I've written here. Everything else is stuff like the sledgehammer. Really love that.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. There are so many great, funny bits. The sledgehammer, just like stuff that you think shouldn't work but does, like the Doctor, like I was going to say, fingering his way out of trouble, but that's not what I mean. You know, like doing the cousin
when he does the kind of cousin it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many funny bits to it. My favorite bit is if you check out the Doctor Who extra. You know the bit where he's got to like push his hand out and go, it's the murals out of Clara's bag. Yeah. They show how that was accomplished, and it was somebody of an age of Capaldi, because presumably they need the skin texture, just like a hand through the bag, wearing Capaldi's jacket, but he looks the spit, this guy, the stand-in of Larry David. And so
that's amazing.
It just looked like an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where, like, I don't know, maybe Larry's fallen on hard times, so he's got to be a hand double. He's got to be a hand double for like a TV sci-fi show. Which is funny. Amazing. Which is funny because another link between these two episodes is that hand doubles for the Doctor are key players.
I was gonna say just that. I've played this brilliantly. Once again, I've absolutely fucking nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, jumping ahead. Celestial Toymaker, the disembodied hand, is played by a guy called Albert Ward. He was the hand double for William Hartnell. Now, the interesting thing is when they were filming that at Ealing, Hartnell was there to pre-record and feed the because there's dialogue with the Toymaker as well.
But he balked at moving the pieces.
Well, I
around,
don't
didn't he?
know, but I mean, like, obviously there's stuff within the Toymaker's history, his production history, that at one point they wanted to get rid of Hartnell. And I wonder if there was just such a breakdown in trust between the production staff, in that case Donald Tosh and John Wiles and William Hartnell. They just went, mate, we can't even trust you to be a hand, right? We don't want you to be, we've got a guy who's the hand, just record your stuff and piss off on your homes. Like, that's, but more on that when we get there. But
more on that and much more later. But those, it's that bit. Oh, don't do that. It's a bit wrong.
Yeah.
Is that a fanny gag? What is that doing?
Is it? I hadn't thought of it like that.
I've never quite got the.
I think it's just because it looks weird, and I think there's maybe with Doctor Who, you've got to be very careful. Production staff have got to be very careful that concept and realize that the realization doesn't let it down. So like a hand flapping out of a tiny TARDIS, people might just go, oh, because how many times has there been a tiny model version of the TARDIS in classic Doctor Who, and you've immediately went, oh, nah, don't believe this for a minute.
Yeah.
Like when the TARDIS shrinks in Legopolis, when you have the model TARDIS that appears on the beach in the Keys of Marinus, like there's loads of tiny TARDISes that look shit in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I think they probably
Yeah, I mean, on the subject of the tiny TARDIS, I think what you were saying earlier on about the tone of it, I think you are right. The kind of comedy of the tiny TARDIS is good, but actually, and obviously as the episode goes on, it kind of goes more into it. But that line the Doctor has, where it's something like, was it Clara's like, oh, I need to go home or something, and the Doctor's like, that is my home. I can't fucking get into it or something. And that's true. Like, the TARDIS has always been this kind of place of safety. So as funny as it is to kind of see it shrunk down and see like Capaldi kind of like crawling his way out of it and and Larry David sticking his hand through it, it's still under attack, and that's and to do that, the stakes must be pretty high. And you always kind of get that, certainly around this kind of general point in a series of Doctor Who, it's usually the kind of light throwaway one.
Yeah.
But to pull that card and for it not to feel, because what were we talking about recently? Where was it? Maybe just series? I can't remember, but we were talking about kind of. Oh no, I know what it was. Image of the Fendal, which was a while back now. And you talked about, you can't kind of just throw away this like, oh, they were the Time Lords were terrified of these creatures just for the sake of it, and to not have the monster and the story kind of back up that threat that is kind of written in the dialogue. And I think here it feels it's like the TARDIS is under attack because it's a very strange, unpredictable foe.
Yeah.
And to have the Doctor in a position of not knowing anything means that as much as he can guide Clara through the sort of general basics of being the Doctor, they're still kind of learning in tandem, and she's kind of through her eyes kind of teaching him about the boneless and what he needs to know to defeat them by the end of it. It's really interesting thing to do, actually.
Actually,
and I know it's just a device to get rid of him, but I think it does kind of add a kind of dramatic heft to the story.
Well, it was better. It was better than was it The Lodger? And the reason that the Doctor and Amy Pond are separated is because somebody just gets blown out the TARDIS and somebody else doesn't, and that's
and it can't land because there's a silent spaceship in the loft.
I mean, that's one of the. I think so. What does TARDIS stand for? I think even people who are not fans would be able to go time and relative dimension, something. Like they would that word, that dimension. So to have a baddie that is so ingrained in one of the bits of terminology for the series, and that this is the first time they've shown up. I think that's a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
To go, okay, what these are baddies that literally fuck around with dimensions. What's another dimensional thing that we have? How the TARDIS operates, without going into detail. You found a cast iron way of going. That's why that is in the episode now. So I think it's great. And I remember so Jamie Matheson used to be a stand-up comic. I think I'm right in.
I think that, I'm pretty sure that's because did he not do gigs with Frank Skinner or something like that? Was there not like some kind of? So. Did they not kind of know each other?
Yeah, he was of that kind of like early '90s comedy. I remember there was that second Doctor Who thing at the Excel Centre. There was the 50th anniversary one, and then there was one about next series. About just kind of like Series 8 and Capaldi and Jenna Coleman and Michelle Gomez were there. They had a writers panel. Jamie Matheson was one of them with Stephen Moffat. I remember he was of a kind of an elegant and really thoughtful level of discussion about writing for the show as Moffat was. So I can see why the two of them hit it off. And certainly if you go and watch Moffat talking about Matheson pitching the ideas for the episodes that he did. He comes in with like art books of what the monster should look like, and he's got he acts everything out. These stories of like people pitching a film and going,
which Stephen Moffat does as well. Yeah. Like,
so I can see why. And I guess that's why it's also funny and dangerous and equally measured out. I don't know. I feel like I'm probably just like, like blowing up the my own profession there by going, well, of course, if you want classic Doctor Who, if you want an absolute stonking classic, you need a stand-up comic to write it for you. So I'm just saying.
I don't think. I mean, I'm trying to think how to phrase this without sounding like just snippy and arsey, but I think he's great. I think this is fantastic. I think Mummy the Orient Express is great. I do think does he co-write The Girl Who Lived with Stephen Moffat?
Pass, but yes, let's say yes. I feel like yes.
No, sorry, The Girl Who Died. Sorry, Girl Who Died. Less. I mean, there's some really good stuff in that, but I think it much like all of those stories that have to also serve some kind of arc purpose is kind of weighed down. And it's the same with Oxygen as well, which I think is fucking fantastic until the last 5 minutes.
Oh, the going blind stuff, yeah.
Yeah, fucking get rid of it. But they're still great. They're still very good Doctor Who stories. I am quite surprised that, I mean, I guess Chris Chibnall just wanted a new writing team.
Yeah.
But there's a few writers that come up between now and Twice Upon a Time that it would have been nice to see come back, I think. And he and Jamie Matheson is definitely one of them. Sarah Dollard, who writes the sequel to this, I guess, Face the Raven. And tonight, it would have been great to see her come back as well. I think she's really good. But it was not to be, or certainly not yet. Well, I mean, we don't know if we'll ever have Doctor Who again, to be honest, after Christmas.
Yeah, well.
So it's just all going to be fucking Big Finish now, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, talking of Big Finish, I listened to The Nightmare Fair. I mean, obviously more on that with Celestial Toymaker, but I did my homework for Celestial. Flatline is great. Flatline's great. Should we wrap it up? Should we do scenes and performances?
Yeah, where are we? Sorry, hang on. Oh yeah, we've done about just under an hour, so yeah, let's wrap it up. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of this. But
well,
but then I don't really know what else to say other than thanks. Yeah, because like I say, I've just written a bunch of notes of just stuff I really like. Like
there's sometimes it just
the Wile E. Coyote plan that Clara has,
Yeah.
which is just you just paint a door and then that's
Yeah, I mean, even that, which should be shite.
yeah,
Like, we'll just door birds
yeah,
a bigger box with a stick. Bird seed, get your
yeah,
the door. But there's just there's something about Douglas McKinnon that it just like he shows stuff when it needs to be seen, and it's brilliant.
yeah.
And he doesn't show some stuff when it doesn't need to be. And so you never have to have that conversation about did the effect look shit or not. Like I notice you never actually see the person being taken by the boneless. You
Yeah,
always
that's.
it just comes out of the side of the thing, or somebody disappears
I
off
think the
camera, or
closest you get. No, actually, no. You do see the policewoman melt into the carpet, like proper full on, but it looks great. Like it's not. It
yes,
doesn't look. Like I love the way her leg kind of bends into the
yeah,
fabric
yeah,
of the
yeah, yeah,
carpet,
yeah.
and then she kind of goes down, and you see her, which I've never noticed before, but you see her face as well, sort of like fixed in horror, kind of fade into the
All right,
pattern of the
okay,
carpet. It's proper. There's some really creepy, like scary stuff
yeah.
in this in a way that you don't always get. I was about to say in modern Doctor Who, but I think it goes beyond that. I think this is this is genuinely some of the creepiest, scariest stuff in Doctor Who. Full stop. I think because
Yeah.
there's just something. Is there just something kind of existentialist horror about that idea of you literally just fade into the
The
walls and
surroundings, yeah,
yeah, you just disappear and nobody knows where you've gone. And if you're lucky,
yeah.
some people will mourn for you and set up a memorial. But other times, maybe somebody will just walk into your living room bestrewn with booze bottles and pot noodles and just wonder where you went. It's maybe that's why I find it quite frightening. But this is great, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. Um, well, my favorite performance
Mm.
is, I guess, is Jenna Coleman. But everyone's good in this. Like even the guy who's the tram driver is good at it. Is
Yeah,
good in this.
yeah, I like him. Yeah.
And yeah, like like Jovian Wade is definitely somebody that I'm glad to know comes back. There's a real humanity to it, and I think his story is really well told. That
Mm-hmm.
graffiti, we bizarrely live in a world where an unknown graffiti artist is probably the most public and well-known artist,
Yeah.
Banksy, in modern times. But the people who just do it are like
Yeah, they're
don't have
menaces.
money
They're
and
yeah.
anonymity to hide the fact, are somehow to be punished, and they're scourge of society and all that. And I mean, I get what people are saying about like Christopher Fairbank being a bit too like conservative, one-dimensional, but I think we are now recording this in in a tumult of
Yes.
society where there are like that's Twitter. That guy is Twitter and
Yeah. Well, that
newspapers.
whole graffiti thing. Um, there's a really great. I think it's still on YouTube. It might not still be on YouTube. It was probably about 4 years ago last time I watched it. But there's a documentary called Style Wars, and it's all about guys tagging the subway in New York, so like the subway trains and stuff like that. And it's kind of about hip hop culture. It's about graffiti, and it's basically it's a form of expression, but it's a form of expression by predominantly guys that don't have much other outlet, and as a result of that, they're punished. They're chased off the tracks by transport police. They're because I mean, arguably, yes, occasionally they will be risking their lives, and it's probably not worth it for that. But it feels like it's another way of keeping people down. Because yeah, sure, somebody spray painting a crudely drawn cock on the side of a
Yeah,
train, sure, fine,
yeah,
get rid of it. But a lot of it is proper art. It's
yeah.
it's a community. It's an expression of somebody's identity of where they come from. And I think the whole Rigsy plot line is great, and I love that kind of uplifting idea, like that speech Capaldi has at the end, where it's just like, one of your paintings literally saved the world. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah.
Is beautiful. So yeah, so you're right. I mean, I think I think Christopher Fairbanks, who I think he's a great actor. He's one of those kind of list of actors who've been in Doctor Who and slightly underserved, I think. But I do get his purpose, which he is there to kind of represent those people that keep that form of expression down. For what reason, really? I guess, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think he's so, because my favorite scene certainly features him. Well, I've got two favorite scenes, but we'll deal with that one first. Is Clara is definitely, as I said earlier, Clara is definitely a bit more clinical in the way she's dissected how the Doctor does what the Doctor does. But she is at least still willing to be as hopeful as he can be. You know, he's theorizing in the TARDIS. Do they know that they're hurting us? And it turns out, yeah, they know, and that was perfectly the intention. But it's the person who pinpoints that is the guy, the conservative with a lack of imagination. It's through his negativity that it, you know, also very well told, moves the plot along. No, these are I'm a bad un, so I can tell who the other bad uns are.
Yeah.
And so essentially he's the devil on Clara's shoulder. He's the lack of imagination, the negativity, but also, let's say it, the essential police of you know, like, he's the essential element that calls out the reality of something over the kind of the liberal hope that the Doctor is as the angel on the shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, also going back to your kind of Missy Clara kind of comparison, you could argue that he's also that kind of nihilistic influence that I think, you know, certainly maybe not so much the Master, but certainly Missy as this era kind of goes on is. Like, there's that bit in I forgot the name of it. The third of the monks one, is it?
The Lie of the Land.
Lie of the Land, where she's like, he's got to kill her. Sorry, there's no way around it. And they kind of go, oh, well, she is a genius. She's an evil genius, but she's a genius. And the Doctor is kind of like, no, the Doctor's thing is that there's another way. The Master's thing is that the universe is a pretty cruel place, and more often than not, I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
I think that. So he kind of stands for that. I think influence as well, that, you know, could lead Clara with the kind of powers of the Doctor down the wrong path, but obviously she chooses the right one. But yeah, that is a really good scene, and really creepy as well. Like the numbering.
Yeah.
And sort of finding out the numbers, and the guy I love that shot where he's kind of standing quite gormless, and then it cuts back and he's standing perfectly still, and the camera kind of just pans round at a different angle, and you just see that kind of kind of, I guess, sort of graffitied him onto the it's just so good.
Yeah, it's incredibly well realized. I mean, I also like the scene of them in that suspended egg chair thing, and Clara's on the phone to Danny and trying to make it seem like nothing's going on, but she's also trying to get them out of a dangerous situation. I don't know. I just like that.
I watched that, and it just reminded me of many arguments I've had with my girlfriend over. You don't need to answer the phone right now. It's fine.
Yeah. People
will phone you back. And it just reminded me of that. But then obviously I know the story purpose for it, and it's fine. But I was it's like, you're busy. It's fine.
Well, I mean, I can't quite work it out, but is it supposed to be this signifier of change? You know, she's in a difficult situation. She picks up and she's chatting to him. But then we get to the end. She turns him off at one ring whilst they're having the
Yes,
conversation
that's
outside the
true.
TARDIS, and she's like, "I'm in a
Yeah.
meeting." You know, like, is that where the kind of thing is where, look, I'm lying, but this is where to be honest, I've worked out I'm absolutely fine with the lying. I am fine lying to someone I love. So
Yeah.
but
Well, my one more favorite scene I want to throw into the pile
yeah.
is Clara related, and it's when Rigsy decides to kind of make his noble sacrifice,
Yeah.
and she's just in the carriage, and it's just like, what are you doing? And she does that whole thing with it, and it's very doctorish.
Yeah.
You know, fine, it's a hairband rather than some elastic or whatever the doctor would have used, but or a cable probably would have probably tied a cable around it. But it's a very doctorish speech, that kind of idea of, oh well, you know, if you want to save that, inanimate object, then that's very noble, and I'll always remember. I'll always remember you. It's very funny. It's just a really, really good scene. You know, I love Jenna Coleman and Jovian Wade together. I think I'd happily. I mean, fuck Maisie Williams. I'd much rather that Clara left with
Clara and Rigsy in a
off
flying
in a
diner.
space diner.
Yeah.
Would be much more entertaining.
Oh my god, I can't believe that isn't a big Finish box set. You know, after
Not yet.
after revisiting in the
Wait
edit,
till Victoria finishes and
yeah. But yeah, after revisiting in the edit all our chat about the Doctor and Sutek's nephew son as a spin-off, I'm like, yeah, no, come on, I'd like to see, Clara and Rigsy. Okay, well, let's have a jingle, and then let's return with the Celestial Toymaker. All right, we're back, and it's the Celestial Toymaker. And if you've been paying attention, then you'll know that we are over the moon to be talking about this. So let's just do the stats. So the Celestial Toymaker was okay. So let's just unpack this. It's credited to Brian Hales, but what that means is that he wrote the original drafts, was unable to do any redrafting. So the redrafting was done by Donald Tosh, who was the outgoing script editor at the time, and to a lesser extent also the outgoing producer John Wiles. And then all of that stuff was then also rewritten by incoming script editor Jenny Davis. So there's a bunch of folks that are involved. There was also apparently input.
They'll all be up against the fucking wall.
There was also input from the eventual director of this serial, Bill Sellers. This is the only Doctor Who that he did. And all of what they helped create was broadcast between Saturday the 2nd and Saturday the 23rd of April, 1966. And it was watched by an average of about 8.8, 8.9 million folks. The highest for episode 3, God knows why, was 9.4 million people. People seemed to wise up, so it was down to 7.8 million, the lowest for episode 4. Those are the stats. But now, Mark, it's time to play Degsy's Where Did It Come game. Okay, so Mark and Derek sitting in his Mandarin robes up in Aberdeen. Where do you think the Celestial Toymaker comes in the first 5 decades poll of Doctor Who magazine, which was back in 2014?
God. So Derek says, I watched a loose cannon reconstruction of the Celestial Toymaker for this, having only seen episode 4 for obvious reasons. I like the Toymaker as an adversary for the Doctor, and I'm surprised he's never made a return to the TV series. There's a couple of reasons I can think about, but we'll maybe come to those later. The lack of the Doctor the lack of the Doctor in this story spoils it, and most of the toys are bloody annoying. I don't think it's a popular story, so I'm going to say 202. So if there's a line that sums up my feelings on the Celestial Toymaker, it's from Peter Purvis's linking narration on the BBC audiobook version of the Celestial Toymaker, which is in part 3. He says, the Trilogic game is at move 878. Thus summing up the interminable experience of the Celestial Toymaker. So I'm not a fan, but I think it's had a kind of a, because obviously they want to bring the Toymaker back in season 23, and we'll maybe talk about the Nightmare Fair a bit later on. So I think there was a feeling. I mean, the production photos look like a really odd Doctor Who story. They look like the sort of television that you were seeing with stuff like The Prisoner. Actually, again, this is all stuff we can talk about in more detail. I'll grab it. I think it's had a bit of a, ebbs and flows in terms of fan opinion, but I do think it's probably quite low because it, like I say, it's an embarrassment. I'm gonna just come out and say it. It's an embarrassment. I'm going to say, so Derek says 202. I'm going to go a bit lower because Derek 241, isn't it? First 5 decades, Paul.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I'm going to say 222. 20 lower.
Well, the nearest is Derek, so he wins the full 16 points that were on offer in my version of this. It's actually 197 between the Invisible Enemy and the
which is
Savages.
far superior. I've never seen the Savages, but I do now have the. Actually, I can't see the Savages, can I?
No. Well,
so I've got the full audio book though, so I might have a little.
Well, should we talk about how we experienced this then? How did you?
Well, we'll do that. We'll do a quick bit of listener correspondence, and then we'll because there is some. I think from the usual suspects. So Paul McAvoy says, Celestial Toymaker feels pretty drawn out. Pretty drawn out. It's boring and it keeps on going and going. But the concepts are so charming and interesting that it's hard not to keep watching or listening, depending on what medium you're watching it, you're seeing it on. Just maybe once is enough. Jeff Waddle says, for years I was fascinated by the Celestial Toymaker because just like Flatline, it's so different. Another dimension, a world of games created by a powerful entity, creepy clowns, sinister kids party stuff. What could go wrong with that? Quite a lot. There's no threat, no peril whatsoever. And if you read the novel, which you can do in an hour, it's so lacking in any suspense, you wouldn't know where any episode ends. The one surviving episode makes the story seem even worse. Dull as dishwater. Brilliant concept. You could usually make the excuse of low budget and enjoy stories despite this, but really, this is just a pile of utter drivel. He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Me and Jeff. I have a sentence that for me sums it all up, and all of those words Jeff has already said.
And echoing those sentiments is J.R. Southall. The Celestial Toymaker is possibly the worst Doctor Who story ever recorded.
Wow.
My man. Anything and everything that was any good about the original concept seems to have disappeared when Donald Tosh left the story editor's post and passed the scripts along to Jerry Davis, who seems not to have had the first idea of what to do with it. And it shows. I don't know if it's entirely Jerry Davis's fault. I think this is a flawed conceit from the start. Dylan Reese, Toymaker was once a long-lost classic. Now it's a long-lost clunker. It's dull, it's racist, it's slow, and anybody who can't complete the Toymaker's games probably can't even put on a pair of Velcro trainers. And finally, where is he? Rasslon's Trousers. Toymaker's an odd one. It's almost like an early McCoy 20 years prior, and proof again that Doctor can be anything you want it to be. It's not very good, though. Hartnell's absence is painfully obvious, and the script, Stephen and Dodo just can't carry it off without him. Yeah, I mean I think that sets the stall out fairly.
I mean, so I've got a promo pic of the Celestial Toymaker behind me, and if I move my head to hide Clara the Clown.
Oh, please do, because she's fucking irritating.
If you just take these three faces, that's exactly how I feel about the Celestial Toymaker. The three images that you could, the people behind me, they've all just finished watching the Celestial Toymaker. It's Yeah, no, Jeff said it. It's like, this is what I feel. I am absolutely fascinated with this. Absolutely fascinated with the Celestial Toymaker. It's also utter shite. And even after watching it for this, feeling a bit bruised by the experience, I'm still like, I want to go and look some more at the pictures. It's weird. Again, Richie having no idea, no memory that he said this, but Celestial Toymaker is, I think, or was seen to be a classic, to the point that John Nathan Turner wanted to bring the Toymaker back for your right, season 23, because it entirely exists as these quite intriguing, quite fascinating, big collection of set photographs and color stills, all that kind of stuff. And then what you get is just, now I don't know, like, let's talk about it now. How did you experience it? Because I do wonder, are we getting it wrong? If we could see it, would it be?
I don't think we got it wrong, and the reason I don't think we got it wrong is because the existing episode shows it for, and I mean, yeah, sure, it's black and white. So that beautiful color that you see behind you, Ben, in your image there,
Non-existent.
And in those promotional images, none of that comes through. Like, Marco Polo, obviously, none of that exists either. So it would be interesting to see, if for a number of reasons, it would be interesting to see what happens when that, well, I say when that, as if a fucking scene inside Philip Morris's attic. If that was to ever be returned, it would be interesting to see how that really sumptuous color and costume design sort of translates into black and white images. But here, I don't think you get any of that. I think it's really drab, quite dull. It's basically Stephen and Dodo just playing hopscotch for 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
with one of the overgrown Billy Bunter.
Yeah.
And it's fucking insufferable. It's, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, one of the failings of this is if the Toymaker is as mentally all powerful as we're supposed to believe he is, this is what he built. This is the world that he created.
Yeah.
A doll's house with a chair for an invisible doctor to sit down, the Trilogic game, and then couple of crystal maze rooms, or like
not even crystal maze rooms,
like escape rooms. It's got the budget of an escape room that you've stuck in an old shop because your business is going to be there for 6 months and you have to rip it out before the new owners take over the building.
Yeah, but it's not even that. It's like, so I don't know if there's the point to bring it in, but I guess you've kind of teed me up for it. But actually, first of all, how did you watch it? Because we didn't actually get to that.
Okay, so I did my homework.
As you always do, you always show me up on this.
Well, so final test, the final episode is available on BritBox. That's fine. That's
is
good.
it? Okay.
Yeah. So you can get that. The Loose Cannon created 2 versions of this. One way back when they started, so it's a little primitive, and an updated CGI version. Like, it looks great, and they're both available on Dailymotion. And to the point where I wanted to understand the Loose Cannon, well, what do you update? What is our new images come to light? I wanted to see what the update was. So I had one window open of the original Loose Cannon, and I had one window open of the new version. Started them both at the same time, listened to the audio, the better audio of the new version, and then just watched the 2 sets of images flash by to see what did, if anything. I was on a little kick to analyze the technical advancement within fan reconstruction. I
mean, to be fair, that does actually sound interesting from that perspective, but it focus on the Celestial Toymaker.
Yeah, well, it also keeps you a bit more agile, less passive when you're trying to understand what the story's about, what's happening, because you're looking at 2 different things, so you're taking a bit more in. So I felt like it was a bit more of an exercise. It kept my interest.
Like, I would not be upset if, like, not only was this remained undiscovered, if everybody's audiobook versions just burnt in flames and the loose cannon reconstructions were accidentally deleted from a server and were no longer available to be rediscovered. Because, and this is before we even have any discussions about the more problematic elements of it, I found it embarrassing. And I know we talk on this podcast about Doctor Who it's a kids show. It was started out as a kids show, and sometimes I certainly have the feeling that Doctor Who fans get quite upset when they are reminded of that. And I'm about to prove my own theory correct by stating that it feels like, remember when Blue Peter, I don't know if they still do it because I'm obviously way past the target demographic, but remember Blue Peter used to do like a Christmas play?
Yeah. Little panto.
Yeah, it feels like that.
Yeah, okay.
So I was really surprised when you said it aired in April, because I could have maybe, much like I do with the Horns and Imon, forgive it based on the date and time it was, screened. But obviously this was April, so fuck it. It's a mess.
Yeah, okay.
It's incredibly childish. It's all this. It's oppressively so. Christopher Eccleston, obviously, when he was cast as Doctor Who and he was interviewed about Doctor Who, he's like, did you grow up watching Doctor Who? And he says, and he says this in his autobiography as well. He talks about how he never really clicked with Doctor Who because it felt like a kind of middle class authority figure, and it wasn't a character that he could kind of engage with. And I know we kind of discussed that earlier when we were talking about Flatline and sort of younger audiences. And I think, as we proved in that discussion, neither of us have ever really kind of necessarily bought into that as a thing. But listening to this as I didn't watch any reconstructions. I listened to the audiobook. I totally get it. It's oppressively upper middle class. It's that kind of insufferable, like the whole of episode 3 is a game of hunt the fucking thimble, and you're supposed to muster up some kind of engagement in a game that is essentially what happens, and I say this from experience, essentially what happens when you go around to your great auntie's house, and because your dad has long grown up, she no longer has any child-friendly things to keep you occupied. And she sort of refers back to what she would have played as a child. That's what this is. This is not a writing team that understands anything about 1960s children.
Yeah, I thought that as well. It's so dated. It looks like it's so dated. It looks like it was made in like the early 50s, like a Watch with Mother kind of thing.
Yes, there's a definite sort of tinge of that. Yeah,
or even listening to it. If you just listen to the soundtrack, it sounds like a 1950s like children's hour radio show.
Yeah. Oh God. Definitely the first episode in particular, and the first and the third felt like that to me, like a real kind of radio show.
And there's a definite thing going. We watching it now. We're not children, but we were once.
Yeah.
Did children even in the 60s relate to anything that they saw there? It's like a weird particular brand of Victoriana, which and I guess maybe even at that point that all this stuff was chosen because that stuff was scary even back then. But would children have even related to it? Like even putting up a little rhyme at the end of each episode. It's like, did kids still give a fuck about rhymes and riddles back then? It reminded me of, I remember going, and you'll have been in before, but I remember going to the Museum of Childhood in Edinburgh.
Yes.
And going in, it was like a bank holiday thing. My mum took me and my sister. We went in. I thought it was depressing. My sister just couldn't relate to it. And we came out, and my mum thought it was depressing as well, because it was 3 different generations, none of whom could relate to any of the really, and it's all like old toys, but they were all displayed in such a gruesome, garish, ridiculous, decomposing
I used
manner.
to always quite like that about the Museum of Childhood. I fucking loved the kind of creepy,
it was creepy.
fucking monkey dolls and the sort of automated harpsichord, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Lapped that up.
Would even the writers of this, they can't be of an age where this was the shit that they grew up with.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the ages of, you know, Donald Tosh and Brian Hales and whatnot at that time. But yeah, it reminded me a bit of the Lemmy Show Adventure Call sketches.
Yeah.
You know, you wake up in a room, you know, all that fucking bullshit. So it felt a bit like that. But I just found it really boring and quite irritating as well. Like I say, I listened to it while I was making the dinner the other night. And it was the first episode, and you know, Clara the clown, because it's not Clara, it's Clara, and they keep pronouncing it as Clara.
Oh, I thought it was Clara, right? Okay.
No, they keep saying Clara, and I'm like, oh, you mean Clara? But no. And I genuinely, at one point, I was chopping carrots. I was like, I could just cut my finger off right now, and it would be, I would say, about 90% more enjoyable. Than what is currently in my ears. And then I went for a walk the next day, just sort of like along the seafront out to there's like a little lighthouse at the end of the harbour wall. So I just walked around to that. And it was episode 3 I was listening to by that point. And just all the fucking, the police, that kind of stuffy police constable, that kind of character that's set up so brilliantly by Mark Platt in Ghostlight. You know, that's what that character is. But he's kind of dealt with, like, there's something...
Oh, well, sorry. So Sergeant Rugg, you mean?
Yes.
So he's an army guy. He's
oh,
not,
right,
he's
sorry.
Not police.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
he's a big kind of like red, white, big hatted British soldier.
I still think he was a police constable then.
Well, because if you're
maybe
just
because they say sergeant and I'm listening to it, and I automatically, because he does talk about the military, but I just assumed he was talking about his past or something like that. Right, cool, fine. The soldier, and just all that, and like there's like plate smashing and everything's all like really wacky.
That is a tough listen because it's just chaos.
Throw myself off the harbour wall, and the tide was out as well. I would have happily just fucking face planted the little fishing boat that was beneath me. It was just I found a lot of hard work. I'm not gonna lie.
I bizarrely didn't find it as hard as you have. It's hilarious to look how impassioned you are. About this.
I found it just really outdated and just and it's, you know, it's, you're right. Watch Your Mother's a really good reference point. Actually, it's Doctor Who, because I think Doctor Who, what makes it so fucking brilliant, especially in those early days in the 60s, is that it's trying to be like nothing you've ever seen before in British television. It doesn't talk down to children for the most part, I would say. It teaches kids about some quite difficult periods in history. You know, you look at the Aztecs, you look at some of the slavery stuff in the Romans. It doesn't pull its punches. And this, like I say, it's a complete turnaround of that. It's like I say, embarrassing. It's kind of talking down to children. It's the kind of children's television that Lord Reith would want you to make. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Inoffensive, It's all about kind of playing games and having state mandated fun and not thinking for yourself and all. It's just tedious.
Something
really,
before,
really tedious.
something before Nanny takes you up to bed and tucks you in at night, and there's
definitely
there is that. And with all that said, I don't feel as angry as you do, but I certainly get everything you're saying. And so one of the questions that comes from all of that is then, how in the world has the Toymaker seemingly carved himself out as being one of the all-time great Doctor Who baddies?
It's the concept. It's the concept. It's the Celestial Toymaker synopsis, and it's those images. It absolutely is all of that. It's because the story is mostly lost. Well, certainly, it's not, because obviously you've got the audio recordings, but in terms of, but I guess at that point in 1983, the audio recordings were probably just the guy who owned them had them, and maybe he made a couple of copies for his mates.
Yeah,
but it wasn't like remastered by Mark Ayres and sort of distributed commercially.
With narration by Peter Purvis covering over the N word in. We'll talk about that in a minute. But and there's something weird about the Toymaker is that. So I actually quite liked the final test when Hartnell shows up again.
It's a bloody relief.
Well, so that's the thing. So Hartnell's there's like the comic idea that because he gives a doddery performance, he's often considered about one note. But the reality with Hartnell is that when you have a serial where he is off for a couple of episodes, you honestly don't understand how relieved you are to see him again until he shows up again. And so when it stopped being pre-recorded dialogue and a floating hand in episodes 2 and 3, and he's back for part 4, you suddenly get this injection of power. And I think it's also because finally Michael Gough has someone to work opposite, because he's basically a narrator. As the titular character of this serial, he's got fuck all to do. He lays down some challenges in episode 1, and then in episode 2 and episode 3, he's just filling in dialogue with recorded stuff from Hartnell, and he's watching what's happening on a screen, and every now and again he's choosing a doll or a card. He doesn't have anything to do either until you get Hartnell back, and then suddenly it comes to life. And I love, my favorite scene is when the Doctor says, but if I do the last move, this whole place will be destroyed, and you'll be destroyed, or your thing. And he goes, yeah, I've been actually pretty bored with this whole thing, but I'm a bad loser, Doctor. I don't like to lose. And it's just out of sheer petulance that you have, that this character exists. And I love that element to it. But the Toymaker doesn't have a lot to do at all through this entire story named after him.
And I'd written a note during part 4, which is I just don't really get it. So it's the Doctor is supposed. So the idea is the Doctor is this genius, who can solve the trilogic game, no bother. That's kind of the suggestion, right? Yeah. But he has to kind of slow it down a bit, because he can only win if Stephen and Dodo complete their challenges first, and then he gets to complete the game. So obviously the tension is in that. That's the tension of the story. But because Hartnell's absent, you don't get that.
Yeah.
You don't get shots of him or scenes of him kind of trying to kind of mislead the Toymaker as what a
sweating brow because he knows it.
Because he knows he has to kind of make that move at this point, but he kind of needs to slow it down a bit. You don't get any of that. So therefore, all the drama of the piece is just removed. And so it's just a kind of meander through these insufferable Victorian parlour games.
Yeah, and it is that. Like, it's all stuff that you get out of a cracker at Christmas time. It's all of that kind of shit. It's like, it's before even TV and radio. When it's, I'm surprised Blind Man's Buff wasn't in there or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, because what is it? Musical chairs.
Yeah.
Hunt the Thimble.
Hum the Thimble, Hum the Key, various music. What is it? There's a kind of there's a dancing thing,
Yeah.
and it's not a great watch when there's obviously a dance going on and you have one photograph.
Yeah.
They've updated that in the loose cannon second reconstruction. They've tried to make that dancing scene a bit more dynamic with different images. But I also imagine that stylized movement on kind of Doctor Who's budget and rehearsal is probably shite as well. If you could actually see it, it's probably the choreography.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're all weird games that no kid, I don't think, is playing.
No, at that point, no. They're all playing Daleks in the playground.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? I think there's some. Let's be positive for a minute. I think there is some interesting elements to this.
Yeah.
That that I guess if you asked earlier, why is it the Toymaker comes back? And I think it's because the story sets him up as the Doctor and Toymaker met before. That's they're aware of each other.
Yeah. Joe Martin versus the Toymaker is what happened.
Indeed,
So.
Yes. So there's that, and the fact that he is immortal, the fact that he can, no matter how like the Doctor can defeat him, but he will come back. And there is a suggestion, Dodo has that line. It's like, oh well, will we ever I hope we don't ever see him again or whatever it is. And Doctor's like, well, probably will. And they're setting him up as a kind of nemesis.
Yeah, there's a moment of mythology with a capital M right at the end there.
Definitely. And but I just think the story that he's in doesn't live up to that promise. I guess what we were talking about earlier on with Flatline, where it's like, if you're going to put the TARDIS at risk, you better make sure it counts, and Flatline does. This, it puts the TARDIS at risk. It presents the Doctor with a potential nemesis, but in this story itself, never lives up to those stakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's why that kind of rematch in the Nightmare Fair, which again it's the same format. It's the Doctor and the Toymaker play a computer game, so they've updated it a bit. Whilst Perry and I can't remember the guy's name kind of make their way through a kind of these kind of fun fair attractions, and have to kind of solve these.
Oh yeah, so it's Blackpool Pleasure Beach.
Yeah, it's
which again, Blackpool Pleasure Beach was probably thought to be a bit naff back in the 80s. Because by that point everybody's been able to do cheap flights to Europe. So who's really sticking around at home? I mean, I 100% was. Blackpool was the holiday destination for this guy's family.
Well, again, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say this. Maybe it's patronizing, but again, that maybe brings it back down to class. Although I've listened to the Nightmare Fair and it's absolutely not about that. But because Blackpool was kind of more of a northern. That was the kind of northern holiday destination. If you couldn't afford to, and like sort of Scottish stag nights and hen nights would go off to Blackpool and all that kind of thing. But you don't really get any of that Nightmare Fair. But yeah, I don't know my point with this. The Nightmare Fair is shite as well, basically. I think it's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Obviously, the images of this, those kind of promotional studio images, for me, kind of called to mind stuff like The Prisoner, that kind of weird, hallucinogenic, psychedelic kind of 60s television. And also those kind of episodes of Star Trek, where Kirk and the crew will meet some kind of godlike figure who will, pit them against each other. And that is a Star Trek trope after that point, isn't it? That's kind of something that will appear in each incarnation of Star Trek. But that, to me, I mean, I think some of those episodes are utter shit.
Yeah.
But when those episodes, and the same with The Prisoner, I think, it does. There is a kind of psychological unease and a kind of strangeness. And is maybe the problem with the Celestial Toymaker purely because it's shot in black and white? Would I maybe think of it differently if we still had it and it was all in color and it was that kind of psychedelic experience that you get with The Prisoner and Star Trek? And
maybe, I mean, but because there's because the weird kind of like Soviet theater minimalism of some of the black and white images also make it quite attractive and unnerving as well. So I don't know. I just think that because the images are there, black and white or color, we can create any kind of idea we want. Whereas I think really it's not the set, it's not the casting, it's not the costuming, it's the storytelling which is bluntly at fault here.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, because it's been watered down because of the number of writers, or just because it was a shite idea to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously had faith enough in Brian Hales that he comes back and he's a regular contributor to Doctor Who for the next decade.
He creates the Ice Warriors. I mean, yeah, he's clearly got some skills and some interesting ideas. I don't think this is it. Although Dylan Reese did sort of tweet us and say that let me just bring up the name of it. But there's a lost Brian Hales script from the Troughton era called The Queen of Time. It's basically the Toymaker story done better, but with time rather than shit games. Well, worth a listen.
Well, do we want to talk about it? Do we want to attempt to understand it? Talk about the accusations of the racial element or the racist.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the N-word element of it is obviously indefensible.
Yeah, which is interesting. So in the Peter Purvis narration, he narrates over it. You can kind of still hear it beneath, but it's in the way. And interestingly, in the loose cannon reconstruction, they deliberately fudge the audio, so they take it down, and so it just sounds like so you can't hear him say anything. So even they've become sensitive. I don't mean even they, like they're the last bastion of. I don't mean that at all. But like it's unacceptable, and I guess it was pointed out in an article Elizabeth Sandiford wrote, which was it was unacceptable back then as well.
Yeah, I mean, fucking hell, the civil rights movement.
Yeah, but then as we've discussed, there's a weird kind of there's a like as childhood things. This is Victoriana. This is Edward Lear and Lewis Carroll and the Wizard of Oz kind of stuff. So are they trying to make a comment that goes, yeah, okay, it's not acceptable, like now, i.e. the 60s, but it was back in that period. But then there's nothing, there's no chastising of the king.
No, exactly. Nobody calls
for
it
using that language. So it's definitely, it definitely is unacceptable, obviously. But and the reason that we're having this conversation is because, like, when I was researching this weirdly prompted me to do a lot more research on the background of the Celestial Toymaker. So I did come across the article that Elizabeth Sandiford wrote about is the Toymaker, the very idea of the Toymaker, is that racist as well? Is the Toymaker the Lee Sun Chang of this, to the the talons of Wang Chiang? Now I don't know. He's described as a Mandarin. He's dressed in that kind of pantomime Chinese baddie that you get in plays and in Fu Manchu and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think Michael Gough is yellowed up, and I don't think he's doing an accent.
No, I don't. There's moments where it seems like he might be. Thing is, you look at that costume. It's widow twanky.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying but at the same time, it is a certain cultural thing. And obviously that's what the conversation at the moment is about. It's about kind of the racism in culture. That's kind of just like this kind of subtle bias that kind of inflects a lot of kind of popular culture at the moment. And I think absolutely the Celestial Toymaker is that in terms of the look. Now, what they go on to say is that obviously Celestial is a kind of old world uh, term for a Chinese person.
Yeah. So
And
the original. So yeah. So this is interesting because I certainly learned something in this element. So celestial always started as the word meaning kind of the heavens, cosmic.
yes.
But in the 18th and 19th century, the Chinese Empire was known as the Sun Empire, the Empire of the Sun. And so a lot of Chinese immigrants that came to the Americas were called celestials. That was the slang referring to people coming from the Chinese Empire. And so it's become that. It's certainly become that. And one of the things that was argued in the essay, and some other places I've seen it as well, is that when Brian Hales originally pitched it, it was called the Celestial Toymaker. So I think you can probably understand, yes, it meant it as the cosmic, all-powerful Toymaker.
Yeah.
It then got renamed to the Trilogic game, and then got named to as the Toymaker, and then it finally went into production as the Celestial Toymaker. So they reinstated the word celestial after presumably they'd made the decision to have the game's called the Towers of Hanoi as the Trilogic game, and have him dressed as a Mandarin. And apparently the Toymaker was dressed as a Mandarin because the game chosen was this Towers of Hanoi. So you can maybe twist your head around and think, okay, well, if he's got such a wandering mental spirit, is it that the Toymaker found some sort of interest, some sort of like intense interest in the games, the society of China, who had that kind of mathematical and educational toys before a lot of the Western world did, and that's why he's dressed like that. Because like there's no eye makeup that's going on.
No.
And his accent just sounds like an elder actor who's had a lot of sherry after matinees kind of voice, But yeah, there's definite accusations that there's a lot of things that have been deliberately done to make this a racist production.
I think what that article does quite nicely is it does show up the kind of endemic sort of racial prejudices and stereotypes that were kind of existent in the culture of the time, in the mindsets of a lot of the writers of the time. Like I said, at the start of this section, like this story is written by people who haven't a fucking clue what kids of the 1960s are interested in.
Yeah, it's another element that feels just another thing you can go, this is on the out of touch pile.
Yeah, and it's definitely out of touch for the time. I'm not gonna do that whole, oh well, it was a different time. It's categorically out of touch, and fuck it, out of touch and racist for the time. A lot of the stuff in it. I think the whole Celestial Toymaker title argument, I think, is a step too far. I think the script makes a fairly clear point that it's more to do with this sort of immortal dimensional entity, rather than like bloody Chinese, huh? It's not that. I don't think it's that. No, I think it would obviously have been helped if, like, say, for example, when Michael Goff appears in part 4 of the Hopscotch game, like maybe he's got a different, he wears a different outfit to talk to Stephen and Dodo. And you're right, he's wearing the kind of the Mandarin outfit for the Towers of Hanoi because he's got various desktop themes for whatever games that he's playing. But they've probably only got one costume and they want a kind of certain look for the character. I don't. The thing is, what I really hate about Elizabeth Sandifer is that I end up defending Doctor Who stories that are utter shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly anachronistic.
Yeah, do you know what? It's fucking racist. Let's just get rid of it. Let's move on. Next week we're talking about In the Forest of...
Yeah, I don't like it. The next time I revisit this, it'll probably just be the
You're going to
pictures.
revisit it again?
Well, that's the thing. It'll probably just be the pictures. I think I will always be fascinated by the images and the what if of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, I do remember when I started to get Doctor Who reference books right back when I'd seen a fraction of what Doctor Who canon was.
Yeah.
There was definitely something about the Celestial Toymaker that seemed appealing. I don't know what it, like, the kind of, everyone else was on the level of the Doctor. It was either an alien or somebody from his own race. This is the first time we encounter, like, a godlike being who's above the Doctor, that the Doctor is able to still commune with. And the fact that there is that, as I said, that kind of mythology with a capital M ominousness at the end of the episode. You just think, okay, there seems like it's a new production team and there's a statement of intent here. It's now the third series of Doctor Who. They are confident and they know that they've got a few more series ahead of them. They're laying some groundwork. This sounds good. I guess talking about mythology, sidestepping, is that the intention was that this was a regeneration story, if it was going to be called then. So they wanted, so Hartnell and John Wiles and Donald Tosh were not getting on, and they wanted to write Hartnell out. His contract was up with episode 4, and they wanted to do essentially what they did with Fraser Hines and Hamish Wilson in the time, in the Mind Robber, is that once the Doctor had been de-invisibilized, that he would come back with a changed appearance thanks to the Toymaker. Now, apparently, when Wiles pitched this, it was given a definite no by the figures higher up, and that is one of the reasons why Wiles left. He quit as producer just because it's the production situation. His relationship with Hartnell was untenable. Hartnell was kept. Apparently, had a better relationship with Innes Lloyd, so that's why he was able to survive a few more stories. But it's always fascinated me that this could have been a regeneration story, and more than that, I can never find anywhere detailing how far the idea of getting rid of Hartnell and
I wonder if they thought about casting. Is
there a list somewhere saying this is who we want?
I'm sure Richard Bignell would have found it by now, or Andrew Pixley.
Yeah, was Troughton first approached as far back as here, rather than? I mean, we're not that far away from the end of Hartnell's run. There's probably another 6 months on him before Troughton actually debuts.
Yeah, sure.
I do wonder, was it a thought? Did he go, like, in that same hour of having the thought, did he ring somebody up and they go no, and that was the end of it? Or was there a process of even thinking about casting, I just find that interesting. That's just something I always find fascinating about this. Again, there's more things to talk about with this story than there is moments to enjoy in this story. Well, shall we put in favourite scenes and performances?
Yeah,
I've already done my scene. I like that last scene. And performance, I'm going to give it to Michael Gough when he's got someone to act up against.
Yeah. I'm probably got the same favourite scene as yours because I think it's the only good scene in the whole bloody thing. Favourite performance is Peter Purves, because he seems to be having as shit a time as I am watching it.
Yeah.
So
apparently,
out of solidarity, I'm gonna pick Peter Purves.
Yeah. Well, so apparently he said that he was when he got the script, he was really delighted with the increased role for Stephen.
Yeah.
And none of that enthusiasm seems to translate to his performance on screen.
He's just so pissed off all the way through it. I love it. Because I am as well.
I mean, and it's weird because the character comes out as pissed off about the Dodo daring to share some shred of humanity and sympathy for these real characters. I mean, actually, another favourite scene is at the end of episode 3 where they're talking about it, and she says something like, you know, it's like he says something, they're just figments of the Toymaker's imagination. And she's like, well, then why would we keep winning? When we go up against them, they make stupid mistakes like humans. And, you know, so there's something interesting there that never really gets flashed out. Also in that scene, there's an interesting thing, and you can't tell from any of the photographs, but they seem to approach one of the fake TARDISes and have to speak to or listen to the Toymaker's riddle on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Is that the first instance where
probably
the pull to open sign comes out and they use the phone, the actual TARDIS? I mean, it's not the real TARDIS, but presumably the fakes have been built to resemble.
Yeah, because they don't do it in another. The only other time I think they would need to do it would be like an unearthly child.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't do it at all until the Empty Child. But is this the first? Like, is this a classic series instance where they've used the phone box?
Well, there's a phone in there, but obviously it's just a
It's
Yeah, probably. I would say.
I think they do it in Logopolis though as well, don't they? Or at least the pretend the actual police box at the roadside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, there we are. That's the Celestial Toymaker. There. As I said here, look, this is a bunch of people who just saw the Celestial Toymaker.
That was good. I feel quite rejuvenated. I don't usually go that deep into just out and out negativity on this show, but
it's deserved.
I think
it's deserved.
And it felt good. It felt good.
I think it's deserved. So that is
and I'm going
to
keep that
Flatline.
Momentum going into next week with
yes.
The Forest of the Night.
In the Forest of the Night is coming up, and we are still struggling to work out what do we pair it with. So, Mark, you put out on social media, you asked for help from the fans. What did they say?
So hang on a second. So both Richie and a new, maybe not a new listener, but certainly a new contributor, Mark with a C, as I'll call him, because I'm the only Mark on the time. Both of them suggested Planet of Evil, and I was like, fucking brilliant. Yes, perfect. And then I looked at the website, and we did Planet of Evil way back when we had the lovely Des O'Gorman on the show, and the three of us did that. The three of us did that. I think we paired it with 42.
Yeah, I thought that we had when I saw that. I
was gutted because I was really up for doing, like, after we'd done Pyramids of Mars, really up for doing another season 13 story.
Yeah.
So that's a shame. Some other people had suggested, so Bernard had suggested Fort of Doomsday, because, you know, the whole plants releasing oxygen, saving lives thing going on, and there's a pointless threat to the Earth. So that was one suggestion. Pete Lambert, with just a gif of a tree hugging Nicola Bryant, obviously suggested Mark the Rani, but we've done that. What else have we got? Dylan Reese suggested the Keys of Marinus, but obviously we've done that. We also had the Sontaran experiment, because obviously nature has covered over, but we did that way back.
Yeah.
Now, we did have some good suggestions that we haven't done, so I'm just going to go and grab those. Although, where are they? Don't tell me the person's like deleted their Twitter account. Oh no, they're there. So again, a new contributor. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's either Cagoldis or Cagolds. Suggested the Mysterious Planet, which is quite a good suggestion.
I'd be up for that.
And I'd be up for that as well. Also, because I volunteered to defend it on the Polis box at some point in the future, so we get to watch it again. Anyway, and it's on Blu-ray now, so I've got it on Blu-ray, so that'd be good to see that. So that's one possibility. Or Creature from the Pit, which is another one, because presumably Big Jungle. So they're good. So I was gonna, and I've sort of, so I would say, let's narrow it down right here, Ben Brath. Mysterious Planet. That's one choice. We'll throw in Creature from the Pit. Okay. My original thought was Planet of the Giants because of like nature and a high concept. And Fort of Doomsday. at
Okay.
number 4 from Bernard. So what are we going to go? Like,
Okay,
what would
so-
you prefer to do?
I'm tempted. I'm tempted to do Creature from the Pit because we could call the episode "Big Jungle Energy." And I'm tempted to do Mysterious Planet because I like a Colin Baker
I like
adventure.
Mysterious.
I like that.
I
kind of
like
stuff.
Mysterious Planet.
Fort of Doomsday's boring.
It is a bit.
What was the other one?
And I feel it fits a Whittaker better, but I'm not too sure which Whittaker. But I feel,
Yeah. Now I also have a suggestion as well.
Okay, Planet of Giants was the other one.
Planet of Giants, and we could do that. We could do Planet of Giants, and we could do Planet of Giants as a follow-on because it would have also fitted here as well with.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But we've been focusing on the plant element. When also
Right.
what are the trees there for? It's because there's a solar flare, and we could do the arc in space, because obviously the trees had not bothered their arse the second time a solar flare showed up, so a whole big arc had to be built and the Earth destroyed.
So we could do a kind of before and after.
Yeah, we could
situation.
do a where were you when we needed you again? Trees special.
Yeah, how did we piss off the trees? What did we do?
Yes,
we probably cut them all down.
Yeah, well, yeah. And there was none there. And,
satire. I'm just doing that to the YouTube. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's
I like that idea actually.
The arc in space thrown in there as well. We haven't done the arc in space, I don't think.
We haven't, and I feel that's mental that we've never done the arc in space.
Because if we don't like In the Forest of the Night, which
we should.
We've got something decent. I think that's what we should do. We should reward ourselves with something. I mean, also as well, from a browsing for listeners' point of view, our listeners going to go, oh my, yeah, In the Forest of the Night and Fort of Doomsday. I need to hear that.
They're two of my favorite Doctor Who stories. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I need to hear what the lads have got to say about those pieces of fucking.
All right, well, I'm up for Ark in Space. I think that might be quite a funny. I think that's quite a funny pairing.
Yeah, okay.
Like,
it's nothing to do.
It's about the trees between 2014 and whenever the Earth was destroyed by a solar flare.
Yeah, okay. Shall we do that then? We'll do the Ark in Space.
Yeah, go for it. That's
okay.
A good, nice one. Good one.
Well, listen, viewers, listeners, thank you for being part of this, as always, with us. If, however you're encountering whatever platform, please like and share and tell people. And again, we forgot to do it in the body. But as always, to everyone who's donated to our Buy Me a Coffee fund, thank you very much. If you do want to buy us a coffee, the notes of each episode on our website and on YouTube, the link is there.
On the Buy Me a Coffee subject, I did say to Derek that I was going to, in the Digs Where the Company Game section, go, if you want to buy Derek a coffee, just put DWDICG in the comments when you leave us a donation on Buy Me a Coffee, and we'll make sure he gets that money.
Well, listen, thank you for being part of it, everybody. I've been Ben.
I've been Mark, and he will be Kev McCulloch.